Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a completely everyday mystery that literally flips traditional biology and history right on its head. Now, we're asking a question that probably sounds like a total joke at first, but once you look at the actual science and the data, it suggests something truly wild about our relationship with our feline friends. So, let's start with a highly relatable scenario. Just picture this. A cat is sitting right there on your chest. You really want to get up, but you refuse to move. And it's not because the cat is heavy, right? It's a 4-kilogram animal. You could easily lift it, but you don't. You voluntarily immobilize yourself, a creature many, many times its size, just because it's purring and, well, moving it would feel kind of cruel. When you zoom out, this perfectly sets up the sheer absurdity of the modern human-cat dynamic. It's a scenario playing out in hundreds of millions of households every single day.
Which brings us to Section 1, the domestication illusion. Who actually domesticated whom? Okay, so the standard historical account tells us that about 10,000 years ago, humans developed agriculture. That created grain stores, which naturally attracted rodents, which then attracted wild cats. The story goes that humans made this super practical decision to actively invite these cats inside to protect our food. In this version of history, we're the ones in charge, right? Cats are subjects. But let's look closely at the actual biological definition of domestication. It literally means modifying a wild species through controlled breeding to be genetically distinct and more useful to humans. Now, dogs, they fit this perfectly. They've been thoroughly reshaped in both behavior and physiology. But cats, yeah, they completely fail this test.
Think about it. A domestic dog has been genetically reshaped by humans over tens of thousands of years. A dog and a wolf are measurably, fundamentally different animals at this point. But the domestic cat? The genetic distance between a house cat and its wild ancestor is remarkably small. I mean, they're virtually identical. They completely lack the biological evidence of human agency and selective breeding. The truth is, humans weren't shaping cats. Cats were just adapting to us.
And that brings us to Section 2, a strange kind of colonization.
So, if humans didn't actively breed and reshape cats, what actually happened? Well, instead of us domesticating them, it was really less like domestication and a whole lot more like colonization. We built these resource-rich agricultural settlements, and cats simply found an environment occupied by a species that was completely disinclined to harm them. So, they made themselves at home. It is a starkly asymmetrical arrangement. Just look at what humans provide: food, shelter, veterinary care, and literally billions of dollars in ongoing financial investments globally. And what do cats provide in return? Just their existing, completely natural rodent hunting behavior. Here's the real kicker, though. Cats were already hunting small mammals long before we ever arrived on the scene. We just got the byproduct of their natural behavior without having to train, manage, or modify them in any way.
And today, the reality is even more skewed. In most modern households, that original practical need for rodent control is completely gone. Zero. Yet humans continue to spend vast amounts of resources, emotional labor, and hard-earned money on an animal that contributes absolutely nothing economically to the household. Humans provide absolutely everything, and cats, they provide companionship entirely on their own terms.
Which naturally leads us to Section 3, the feline manipulation toolkit.
Seriously, we have to ask, how on earth did a tiny 4-kilogram predator manage to secure such a luxurious, completely one-sided deal without doing any real work? Well, the answer lies in evolutionary hacks. Now, it wasn't some conscious strategic planning on the cat's part, it was functional manipulation. Over thousands of years, cats developed or retained very specific behaviors that brilliantly hack human psychology and our deep-seated parental instincts. Let's break down this toolkit, which includes the human-targeted meow, the slow blink, the solicitation purr, and their distinctly juvenile facial features.
Let's start with the meow, because the reality of this is absolutely fascinating. Get this. Adult wildcats almost never meow at each other. It's essentially absent in their adult communication in the wild. But domestic cats, they meow almost exclusively at us, humans. And here's the absolute genius part of it all. Acoustic research shows that a domestic cat's meow actually shares specific frequency ranges with human infant distress vocalizations. It is quite literally a communication system tuned specifically to our human auditory sensitivities, instinctively demanding our attention and care.
Then, we have the slow blink. When a cat looks right at you and half closes its eyes, it functions as what scientists call an affiliative trust marker. What's wild is that it triggers the exact same neural pathways in the human brain that human-to-human social bonding does.
When we receive that slow blink from a cat, our social bonding machinery lights up, making us feel like a highly meaningful, genuine social exchange has just occurred. And of course, that guarantees we keep providing all those lovely resources. But the physical properties of a cat's purr, that is where things get truly wild. A cat's purr vibrates at a range of precisely 25 to 150 hertz, with the energy primarily concentrated between 25 and 50 hertz. And this isn't just some arbitrary, pleasant sound for us to listen to. No way.
It is essentially a biological massage on the human nervous system. In human medicine, therapeutic vibrations in this exact frequency range are heavily documented to promote bone density, accelerate the healing of soft tissue injuries, and even reduce swelling and pain. So when a cat sits on your lap and purrs, it vibrates right through the contact surface, delivering sustained, low-frequency input that is physiologically calming to your body. It is an extraordinarily sophisticated physical tool.
All of this brings us to Section 4, the hidden health benefits. To be completely fair to our feline overlords, this whole arrangement isn't entirely one-sided. The cat actually is an active contributor to our physical well-being. Science shows some incredible, measurable physiological impacts from cat ownership. We're talking reductions in blood pressure, lowered heart rates, decreased cortisol levels, and incredibly, even improved survival outcomes after cardiac events. Cats provide us with a vital social connection and measurable stress reduction, but crucially, they do all of this without the anxiety, complexity, and demands of human-to-human interaction. So it really is a genuine physiological exchange. Which finally brings us to Section 5. Who is really in charge? Even with all those health benefits, you have to admit humans take this arrangement to absolute extremes. We heavily modify our sleep schedules, our homes, and our finances just to accommodate these tiny predators. And honestly, it exposes a massive asymmetry of control. Think about dogs. Dogs are highly prosocial, right? They accommodate human schedules, they constantly seek our approval, and they get distressed by our absence. Cats, on the other hand, they definitely form attachments, but they approach and withdraw strictly on their own terms. If a cat wants interaction, it dictates the schedule, the manner, and the duration. And hey, in any relationship, the species that sets the terms is by definition the one with more power. Now, this absolute power isn't just some modern phenomenon. It is deeply, deeply entrenched in our cultural record. Across virtually every major civilization throughout history, cats have heavily influenced human cognition. You can trace this from the ancient Egyptian goddess Bastet to the Norse goddess Freya, whose chariot, by the way, was pulled by cats, to the Prophet Muhammad's deep respect for his cat Muezza back in the 7th century. And this goes all the way up to the modern era where we see the absolute dominance of internet cat culture. It leads to a pretty profound realization. Given unlimited choices, humans overwhelmingly chose to engage with cat-related content. When the early internet gave humanity a completely blank canvas of global communication, what did we actually do? We shared pictures and videos of cats. This dominance is what economists call a revealed preference. It proves that humans possess a deep, almost hardwired psychological vulnerability to cats that totally transcends any rational explanation. Guys, this isn't just clever pet food marketing, it's a fundamental hack of our neurology. So, we're left with our final question. Did cats domesticate us? Well, biologically speaking, no. But functionally, they successfully reorganized human lives, economies, and our very homes around providing them with endless resources, all without changing a single thing about themselves. Thank you so much for joining this explainer. The next time you voluntarily freeze your legs because a 4-kilogram animal decided to take a nap on you, maybe just ask yourself, are you actually keeping a pet, or has a tiny apex predator successfully hacked your free will?